What? We're recording you.
You're
Where do I start to get a money for a bulkhead neighborhood? What agency? The
Your
county?
neighborhood.
Need to get Jonette on board. I really want one.
Jeez.
All right. It is 5:35. We better start.
All right, are you ready? Everybody ready? There's a gavel. All this special meeting for Lavaca City Council to order on this Monday, December 4, 2023 at 5:35 p.m. Get the usual formalities, and I will ask if there's anyone here to speak to council at this time from the public. Seeing none, looks like staff and board members here. So we move on to the regular agenda item, which is to the agenda item number 1 to discuss the corporation bid culvert replacement project if any action necessary. 30.
Yeah, the status has not changed from, the last council meeting. I think Helena is, projected to have a meeting hopefully tomorrow. So I should have some more information later this week. I'd recommend, just passing on this item and we can put it on the agenda for next Monday in case we've got something at that time to discuss.
Motion we pass on the sign and put it on next regular meeting agenda.
I second it. Okay. Okay, a motion and a second to pass agenda item number 1. Corporation ditch culvert replacement project. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The opposed, same sign. Opposed, motion passes. I don't think there's anything on session, so I would entertain a motion to adjourn at this time.
Move.
Oh. Oh. That was all we had.
That's all we had.
We posted it, so we gotta call it. Okay, we have a motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those same signs, same opposed, motion passes. And move on to our workshop meeting at this time. I will call this workshop meeting of the Port Lavaca City Council to order on this Monday, December 4, 2023 at 5:37 p.m. We'll skip the usual formalities, and I'll ask if there's anyone here that wants to speak at the workshop session. Mention anything to council? None? We will move on to our regular agenda for the workshop, which is to discuss zoning ordinance. Who wants to start it, Derek?
Well, I can give a little intro as they're getting,
Yeah.
just, Mayor Council, recall in 2019, we spent a good bit of time that year working with the zoning advisory committee and trying to establish a zoning ordinance as part of a unified development code. And if you recall, in February, I think it was 28 of 2020, we did have a meeting at the Bower with council and planning board and some community members. And that to kind of lay out what had been kind of presented by the zoning action committee. And as you recall, that was received like a lead balloon, I think. It was, there's a lot of detail involved. And then, right after that, we got hit with COVID and all sorts of things. And so, we finally trying to bring this back to the table, gearing up again with the ultimate goal of having a zoning ordinance. What Derek and a few people that remain with the zoning action committee have done is kind of taken what was presented before, and we did put that in your packet just for reference. The draft unified development code that had been prepared at that time, and pared it down to something a little simpler. It may still need to be simpler than this yet, but this is, we wanted to get something to you that we can start discussing and decide, okay, are we on the right path? So we can continue on, and if not, what course correction do we need to make before we continue on and bring something else again back to council. I know I've, sent this to Anne Marie. I don't know how much time she's really had to look into it. We're looking for some feedback from her as well. But so what we thought we'd do today is Derek can kind of just give you an overarching approach on discussion on what he's got here. Justin Weaver's here also, and worked quite a bit with Derek on this. He was instrumental in the original zoning action committee, and then just kind of go through the ordinance page by page. I'm hoping everybody had a chance to kind of go through it over the last weekend, over the weekend, and maybe present any questions. Again, I think my objective tonight is one, to find out, does this look promising? Are we going in the right direction? And if not, okay, what changes we need to make to do something different? Okay. Okay. So Derek, I guess you can just start us off.
There's one question before we start. This picture from AgriLife, we haven't updated the map yet based on this document. Okay, so
No,
there may be some
correct.
differences, but it's generally.
Yeah, the first thing we want to do is get the format of the plan together,
Okay.
then we'll deal with the map.
Okay,
Yes.
all right, just check.
Basically what I was looking at was, I was trying to develop an ordinance for zoning. I know that, Zach was, trying to do a UDC. But, trying to combine subdivision and, building permits and all the other requirements and everything. It's that's a lot to take care of at one time. So I was thinking of just taking care of the zoning aspect of it for right now, and then slowly start working all of it into one UDC. And that's the intent of this ordinance. Basically what I did is, what I was recommending is I removed from the original draft, the pre-development, utility connections, building permits, COs, site plan requirements. Basically just reduced it down just to the zoning aspect of it.
So all these other things are in other ordinances.
They're in the ordinance already.
CO, is that certificate of occupancy or
Yeah.
what?
Yes.
That's already in the ordinance.
Yeah.
But that's what you referred to when you said
Yes.
CO.
Yes, I'm sorry, yes. So basically what we have is, showing that the adoption of the zoning ordinance and the jurisdiction, purpose. We have the definitions. Pretty much all that's self-explanatory unless if somebody has any questions on them.
And the advantages of having that falls under the purpose, the
Yes.
advantages of the
Yeah.
plan.
So we have a guy over there in the neighborhood that he's starting, he wants to build a warehouse, and he got a lot of heavy equipment stuff in there. Does that have something to do with the zoning area? Is that,
Yes.
so?
And that's the intent of this ordinance. When somebody has a situation like that in a residential area, they're gonna have to request a change in zoning or specific use permit.
What if he's already started without?
He hasn't got permission yet.
You don't have a permit?
Do that.
He's got heavy equipment there, and he's got his posts up, to build a fence, but it's a mess. It's like a dump. It's a mess. Got all kinds of stuff dumped over there.
Maybe we need to get enforcement over there. Because, I mean, that's.
It's what that's, it's what I think it was approved as a screened laydown yard, no buildings, no manufacturing.
Right, no buildings.
Nothing. So he's got a lot of restrictions on that property for what he's allowed to do. But because we don't have zoning, we can't outright ban the use as commercial. So with the addition of zoning, you would have protections of neighborhoods like.
So that's what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Right.
correct.
This gives, whenever somebody does something like that, this gives the opportunity of surrounding neighbors, within 200 foot of that area. And that's by state law. We sent out, a notice to them saying that they're recommending that they want to do this to their property. If you know, they can say yes or no, and so, the neighbors do have
They don't have a King's X, but they have certainly the right to object.
Right.
But they don't have like the zoning committee can overrule that right, you know, for whatever reason.
But I think when people are asking, well, why do we want to do zoning? The answer is yes, in section 56(3), the purpose. That is in here to show why we want to do this and what it will accomplish.
Yeah, makes sense to me. Although, Mr. Weaver, on that, didn't the Port Commission want to do some residential on at the,
But Al,
it's
we're
all
not-
industrial.
right, we're not dealing with the map yet. This map was what was adopted in 2016 with the comprehensive plan at that time. And
Okay,
so, and then the other exhibit that we put in your packet is what the zoning action committee had painstakingly come up with in 2019. That should be in the packet as well.
But also to speak to his, doesn't this allow for you to go down in districts but not up? So if that's industrial,
well, that's what I was gonna explain.
So that's why I think maybe explain the cumulative zoning method.
Okay, yeah, that's basically what it is. It's cumulative zoning. What I was looking at in the draft, the original draft, is that they're trying to make everything fit within certain districts. And I just felt that since the city has already established certain areas where there's businesses, you know, commercial, residential, if we do cumulative, then I think it'd be better fit for the city. And by meaning that is, like you were talking about, if there's an industrial area, say if you have a property that's in the industrial, if it's zoned industrial, you can still build residential housing there
or commercial,
or commercial.
but you can't go to a residential district that's really restricted and build industrial
Yeah.
Right.
or commercial.
okay, I can see where the change.
So you can't go to Cleric Crossing and build a Walmart.
Come on.
I don't know about that.
Or a dollar store and or
And what I was looking at on the map that was originally,
But real quick, just so everybody knows that is a different concept than what we talked about in 2019. In 2019,
yes,
trying to identify
Yeah.
districts and what you can and can't do. This one, it's
little bit more
gives us
relaxed.
more flexibility, and we're not so stressed over getting this initial map because, you know, it's a cumulative. So,
No, I understand.
Yeah.
That makes sense. And
so
I think that worked better for,
yeah.
it's easier to swallow.
This one
Right.
still retains though that if it's a current use that's different than what it gets districted, then
grandfather
it's grandfathered until you sell it or
change
stop
ownership.
using it.
not necessarily,
Okay.
but not necessarily sell, but the use.
Use.
And it goes into that in the ordinance.
Well, when we get to that part, I just,
Okay,
okay. So.
So we get through the definitions.
okay, the next part, the minimum standards and conflicts. Main thing that I want to point out on there is that we're not enforcing deed restrictions or homeowner association restrictions. It's just city regulations.
Yes, okay.
And then next section is about the adoption of the zoning map. And looking at the proposed. Let's see. In your packet, you'll see the future land use plan. when I was looking at that, it looked like that might be a good one to consider for adoption. The zoning map.
Yeah, I mean, I think we would, and see if there's any little things we need to change, but that was probably easier to adopt.
Right.
What the ZAC committee had come up with.
The only part that needs to be addressed is, and I'll get to it here in a minute, but the mixed use districts. Because I was proposing to do away with the mixed use because it is cumulative zoning now.
Okay.
So it
Makes sense.
let's see.
Make it easier to read.
Yeah, but just to clear, the one that says Plan Port Lavaca, that's one 2016. The one that says Texas Agri Extension, that's the one that was done in 2019. But this is the one that says Plan Port Lavaca. This is the one that is our adopted land use plan right now.
But in here, R1 is more like R2.
Yeah, I think there's some change.
Is this the one that A and M, both of them helped us develop?
The other,
Oh, the other one.
The other one, this is the one that's in the comprehensive plan. No.
no,
So this one.
this was Freeze and Nichols.
Yeah, here it is.
It says A&M right here.
Yeah, no, I got that. So I guess just generally how we would, I mean, again, I don't think we're proposing tonight that we would be adopting either one of these as it present right here. I would imagine we want to make some, tweaks before we adopt it. But it would be as part of this plan an adopted zoning map.
Okay, the next section is transitional provisions, and that just talks about plats that have already been approved by council. Just stating that they're still gonna be in compliance even after adopting of this ordinance.
And I mean, going back to the zoning map, I mean, once it's adopted, I mean, it is final, but there are methods that it can be amended through council action or later on, if it turns out that one area of we thought wrong and it's developing something different and we're doing different ordinance amendments or, changes, we can change up the official.
And that's later in the ordinance, the request for change in zoning.
But changes to the map.
Yes.
But
Yeah, that's just like.
And you're looking at B on under 56.6.
yeah, there's language that provides a way to officially change that,
I'm in the map.
right?
There is.
Yeah, okay. Okay, go on.
As I was saying, the transitional provisions, they just talked about things that have already been approved by council. They're gonna be in compliance after adoption of the ordinance. And then we get into the development of the new districts. Sorry.
That's stuff's going around.
What I was recommending was for the low, medium, high, and multifamily residential. I just put them as R1 through R4. Manufactured home park, I just have them as M1. Mixed use, I was gonna leave that up. I was gonna see what y'all's thoughts were on that. Because looking at depending on where, if y'all adopt, if the council approves the future land use plan as the zoning map. Decide on what's the use gonna be for the ones that are identified as mixed use in the future land use plan.
Weren't you recommending that we don't do mixed use, just eliminate it?
Well, with the cumulative, it's basically mixed use anyway.
So
So if we made them commercial, they could be commercial or residential.
Right.
And now if we went in there, and made
So
them
we could do away with
residential,
that.
then they couldn't be commercial.
You use, change the mixed use to commercial.
Yeah.
I think we can do away with it.
Yeah.
Mr. Drone?
And council can decide if it's gonna be C1 or C2.
We'll just describe those in a minute.
Are they two separate, are they two different?
They are different.
Okay.
And then we have light industrial. And then I2 is more heavier industrial. And then you have public and recreation. And then the PUD, planning and development.
Recreational.
And then we go into the purpose of the zoning districts. Let's just identify what the uses are for each area. Basically, the regulations are the minimum standards and they're being applied uniformly. Next section is just establishes the districts. The in accordance with the adopted in 2016.
Is the R1, was it just 4 dwellings per acre in 2016? I'm thinking R1 is, we were thinking R1 is what we now are calling R2.
Okay, R1 is 4 dwellings per acre.
Right.
Maximum.
But everything on the land use map that's, I mean, R2, right? Because there are already subdivisions that have,
Oh, that yellow.
yeah, so because that's what I'm saying, we don't have. So on the Plan Port Lavaca map, low density there is more like R2.
Right.
And I guess I would question the need for R1 because that's such low density. We don't really have the way to allow that, right? Because we tax base.
I'm sorry.
Why would we want R1 where because it's so wide open?
Everything should have a place though. I mean, so if someone comes in
They want
that,
What is do you know what the density is in Redfish? I haven't looked.
That would be considered as R1.
That's, I mean, four per acre. Yeah,
Those are at least half an acre large.
they are, yeah. So yeah, that would be,
Okay,
that'd be an R1.
Half acre lots, some are quarter acre lots.
okay.
Yeah, they're.
Most of them are at least a half acre, because
Right.
technically they can have an on-site system.
So like when Remont and stuff like that, would that be R1 or that'd be R2?
That'd be like two.
Okay, so.
But yeah, they're for these larger lots.
So if you have an R1 zone, you can do R2, or if you have an R2, you can do R1.
Correct.
Okay.
You can do R2.
R2, yeah.
in an
You
urban,
can
So do you guys?
do an R1 and R2.
Yeah, so wouldn't we prefer to do R2 and not do R1 very often unless it was a specific needs? Because it's less tax, I mean, it's less houses, it's less tax revenue, it's not as good a use of the land. Or is that too detailed for tonight?
That was just, this is something I just proposed. That's up to council to decide.
Justin?
So in the zoning action committee, we had a similar discussion. And there was some concern about utility capacity in certain areas, and so those
Oh,
were treated as R1. Because we were thinking, again, with the on-site sewage and all that, so a place like Redfish where there's flood hazards and, land and that. Those were talked about to be lower density because that kind of the need for utility there outweighed the amount of density we prefer. But if you look at the land use map that is proposed to be adopted in 2016, you find that most of our city is in more of a R2 capacity. So there would be some need to either redefine or redraw the map. But, I don't know if that's still facility wise, I'm not the expert at that, but.
The language in the ordinance, but we can change the map to designate which
And
areas.
you may wanna have, you know, just a place with R1 density to tell people that's where you go.
So like my lot in my subdivision, it's a half acre lot.
We want to keep it that way over there.
I mean, so I like having a half acre.
To simplify,
I don't want you to prohibit me from having.
might would,
No, it wouldn't be, it'd be the other way around.
for something, an initial ordinance would, what would be the downside of just having residential? And residential and multifamily residential.
Behind your house.
I mean, I know like in redfish, we're talking about redfish, and I think right now the existing would be R1. But there has been a lot of talk about the portion of that is not developed right now of coming in there and putting in, you know, smaller lots, or, you know.
Higher density.
Higher density, yes, that would be higher than an R1. And so even with the cumulative, if it's zoned R1, you couldn't put R2.
You'd have to.
You'd have to change it out.
Those are first change zoning.
There's also the question of, can you duplex an existing house in an R1, because that would split the lot in half. So you'd be preventing people from doing like duplex projects further on. So if you build an R1 residence in an R1 neighborhood, and someone comes along and starts trying to duplex the houses, you've increased the density, and tend to be duplex. So your restrictions of like single family home, duplex, triplex, quadplex are also something to consider in your definitions.
So your duplex, I mean, doing title work, I prefer those to be 1A, 1B lots, you know, like platted that way.
Yeah, like your half acre lot.
Yeah.
If you were in an R2 area, then you could duplex it, or you could split it and sell it or whatever. But if you're in an R1 area, that single lot is for a single home, and you cannot increase.
You have to change them.
Exactly.
Right.
So it's how restricted do you want that 1 acre plot? Or
And I'm
half
thinking to Justin's point before, when we're looking at this is R1 because of the lack of sewer in that area or whatever, and they make them, you know, it's zoned big enough for on site, but a developer would have to come in with a proposal to do something different, but then we can approve it to
That would be
be
the change in zone.
R2 or.
Now, the zoning is much more complicated to change, right? So
Yeah.
you have to send notice to the neighbors, notice to within 200 feet. So I mean, once you have zoning, it is a very difficult to get those variances or to change the zoning designation. It is not easy.
So I guess that's where I come back. I mean, how complicated are we ready to go? Whether we just call it residential for now, for
Well, so the way,
clearing things up.
so to add to that, so duplexes are allowed in R2, but not R1. Tiny homes for some are allowed in R3, but not R2 or R1. So, I mean, I kind of like where Jody's going, because I'd like to be the least restrictive, but still be sensible, right? So I wouldn't want to be in an R1 house and then if I wanted to duplex it, because if a developer comes in and wants to change its own, it's a lot likely to happen. But if an individual homeowner just wants to, it'd be more difficult for that individual to use their land that way.
To something that Justin touched on is when you're looking at the way your zoning is, you've also got to look to where you're doing your densities, what is your capacity for utilities?
Of course.
Right.
So, you know, like, you couldn't change Redfish Retreat because.
So maybe the answer there is that area would be a plan unit development.
So, well, but PUD is, I mean, that's a whole different scheme going on. Don't, no, we don't want to talk about PUDs. PUDs are PUDs.
But I think we've kind of decided, well, I don't know if we've all decided, but that we don't need those large lots, like Tim was saying, any more of those. And so if a developer does want to come in and, you know, we want it,
I will take, but taking the devil's advocate approach, let's go with my lot just because it's easy, because I'm familiar with it. if I was my neighbors and it was zoned R1 and I bought in an R1 because I wanted a lot of land, I would be ticked off if somebody came and tried to put in a duplex and split the lot.
Yeah.
And that's on Houston Street and it turned out fine.
Thanks.
Saying, if you're a person that buys in that size,
Okay.
it's not zoned now, but
Well,
If it doesn't exist, they won't do it.
that's, what do you say, Justin?
I was gonna say, if you don't want duplexes, you can lower the size to, instead of having one, you can lower it to a third or a quarter of an acre and still restrict it to single.
I mean, it could never happen in our neighborhood because it's restricted with.
Right, deed restrictions.
Deed restrictions.
We don't mess with deed restrictions.
Oh, yeah.
If someone wants to come in and make a luxury acreage, resort style housing, all they have to do is deed restrict it. This is more to protect people that exist now.
Right.
People that have some kind of a wish-wash investment in their property from having somebody put in a manufacturing yard in their neighborhood. So I think if we really get too stuck up on lot sizes and house sizes, we did that at the ZAC.
Yeah, that wasn't.
We ended up putting it on the shelf, we ended up moving on and we're gonna hit some speed bumps in residential. I would kind of advise everybody to mull over the residential aspect of this and go like, do we want a completely single family home? How big are we comfortable with the lots? Let's think about utilities, let's think about future land use.
I'm just, I just want to make sure that we're not over regulating something to where, again,
It's not, yeah.
for a good example, at the Redfish. I mean, existing development, I think we can say is R1. But there's a lot of that isn't developed at all yet. If somebody comes in and they have a proposal to develop that whole area with, 50 to 75 foot lots, say, smaller, and they're gonna put in a lift station and do all that stuff. How complicated is it to change it from R1 to whatever that would be?
If I may, we keep going back to Redfish as our only example. And I don't know how many of us are familiar with how many houses go up per year in Redfish.
But I'm talking about, this would not be Redfish, this is a new development.
This would be a new development, but I'm just saying, if we are trying to preserve the right of people to come in and build a new Redfish retreat versus a group of people coming in and putting in 100 duplexes
Right.
next year, I think we prefer the growth.
Right.
If we're looking at, everybody in this room can agree that housing is a problem.
Yes.
And if somebody wants to come in and put in 25 houses next year, I don't think people are gonna care if they're 30.
So to Tim's point, then, do we really want an R1? To,
At that restriction
that
level.
maybe our R1 is, we start at 8.
I would still say we wanna have 1, 2, 3, 4. I think that they're laid out with good definitions. I think we disagree on the size.
Or having R1, like you're saying, residential. But I think our team needs to be multifamily because
Yeah, no, we need to have,
we got a separation.
just saying either the low, medium and high, maybe, again, just
Yeah, but just have R1 and R2.
right.
Well, then,
Residential and then multifamily.
No, but you just do, the density is the density, but multifamily would be separate.
well, yeah, multifamily is 4, but with 1, 2, 3, you're talking about sizes, duplexes, there's some other additional restrictions I think in there that I have to read through the definition. I think if we look at the package, some of the numbers are tough. This is the first drafts for everybody.
No, that's just the proposal.
So,
But to answer your question about, if a developer comes in and wants to do, say duplexes in a R1, if he comes in and actually provides a plat showing all that, then they're gonna go through the same process, with the approval of the plat, and with the change in zoning as well. So it's all.
But it can be done. It's not like,
If you.
I don't know.
it's a high bar of entry.
I mean, except what's better about that is if it's a developer developing multiple acreage,
Mhm.
he's not gonna have to contact any landowners because he's gonna own it all.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so he doesn't have to have this, he doesn't have the consent problem that just a lot owner would have like Easton Street. If that had been in zone, then they had to go to force on.
Or it was deed restricted.
Because we have that in Point Comfort. We have zoning committee meetings and, you have to send it out to everybody and it's not a pleasant meeting. often.
My experience with other cities is, there's not so much concern with the residential side as much as the business and commercial and industrial part.
And changing from R to commercial.
Right.
Well, so back on R, on residential. So it allows schools, it allows public buildings, golf courses, but not a church. So
Right.
help me understand that.
Well, because it's an assembly.
School's not an assembly?
I'm sorry?
A school's not an assembly?
Well, it's a public building.
Like private,
What's that?
not private.
It's still a school, probably.
Sorry.
So churches would have to be in,
Special. Oh, it's a special.
Oh.
Sorry. Thank you.
So maybe it could be, but with a special.
Yeah,
so you have to look
Right.
at the unique aspects of it, I guess.
Well, the intent with that is, with churches, but most of it has to do with the parking. That's what I've dealt with in the past.
And traffic flow, I
Right.
guess, too, yeah.
well, that's probably a detail, but
So I mean, I guess so if somebody's bringing in a church, it's just, there's nothing, they can't just say, they can't look at our zoning map and say, okay, I can go here, here. They're gonna have to, where they want to go and get a special permit for that area that's gonna address parking and traffic flow and
Correct.
that stuff.
It would have to be adequate to.
Yes.
Yes.
To take care of the parking and everything. So,
which is the same as the school, or, I mean, you have to have adequate parking no matter
Yes.
what you put in.
That's,
I know, it
that's
just
probably
seems
one of the
kinda-
first things you need to consider is your parking, because where are you gonna?
I
put
think
these-
about in I never know what the Jackson subdivision, where Jackson School is, what subdivision is?
Alma Heights.
Alma Heights.
Yeah.
You have those churches deep within the neighborhoods.
Yes.
But they usually own multiple lots that have some lots are used for parking.
Right.
So, but that has to go before the planning and zoning committee. So, and is that committee our current planning board, or is this a different?
Should be
It'll be the
different.
planning board.
Well,
It'll be the
does it get
planning
it?
and zoning board now.
Okay, well, it just seemed kind of odd that churches is like one of three things that are different than everything else, so.
But, well, I mean, just suggest you put that as one of them, but it's just
It fall under the
R.
school, under R1, the schools, kindergarten, elementary, high, college, university, public or denominational. You need.
Yeah, right.
Denominational is.
Oh, okay. So that's church. Oh, that's a good catch, thanks. Okay, but it still needs a special permit. On page 23 is where I'm getting that.
23. You jumping ahead.
Oh. I did some homework. So it just says may be subject. Not sure what does may mean in a document like this?
It's permissive, not mandatory.
On page.
Well, I guess since I have work at a church.
You said 23.
Okay, well, yeah, I'm not seeing that either. What
So
page?
page 22. Page
22.
is special permit. Right.
Yeah, oh, okay.
Okay, and then if you go to item F. Institutions of religious or philanthropic nature in any district. Okay,
Yeah, so you just have to get on. Yeah, public service.
He's talking about this. There's two 23s. Is that 23?
No, he's talking about not the one that says page, but the original
Yeah.
page. Document.
So we could be looking at,
Maybe they're requiring those permits because some reliables went crazy.
I don't know. I'm just thinking anything that you plat, we're gonna have to.
Well, okay, but to your point, why wouldn't a school need a special use permit? could it?
No, we could include that in the specific use permits as well.
Well, and that kind of goes back to Anne Marie's comment about, I would be mad if my neighbor put a school right next, a duplex. Well, I think worse to put a school next to you. Or a church, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, they can.
Okay. Well, that's a detail, but I'm just,
Yeah.
that's why.
This is just looking at other areas that other cities that have zoning. And I was just kind of trying to fit in to where it kind of meet our needs.
I just get concerned when there's a special use permit for something, then it kind of depends on who's on the board at that time, who's approaching the board. They may get favorable treatment one year, but then the next year, somebody else.
I mean,
That
we
makes,
should really try to avoid special permits and just write it to where nobody needs it other than your plating, right? Or a variance or but for a other than what's already needed, why special permit? That'd be hard to keep up with.
Yeah.
First of all. Practically speaking.
So the special permits, they would need a very.
Back a few years, I'm thinking of like, we talked about special use permits for home-based businesses, but I don't know if that's in this one or not. But there were certain things you could run a business out of your home. It would be non-impactful, it would be allowable in zoning.
Right.
But they would be special uses, so they would be subject to revocation. So like if you ran an accounting, you just did people's taxes out of your den, that's fine. But then if you start doing like larger financial stuff, or if you start taking up a ton of room during that time of year where people are doing taxes and the whole block is complaining, then your neighbors could come to the city and be like, hey, we could pull your permit because it's a house. But you're using it as a business. And so there were some special use permits that were like, we didn't want to over restrict, but then we also wanted the ability not to just like grandfather something in.
Well, so barbershops is in there, commercial stables,
Yes.
childcare, not more than 6 children,
Right.
any office and was chattels. What's the definition of chattel?
I don't know that.
Okay, goods, wares, or merchandise are commercially created, exchanged, or sold on site. So.
Yeah, so there's a home occupation portion that.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's-
Yeah, if you look on the screen, it's on page 12, number 16, it talks about home occupations.
Those are without special permit, right?
Correct.
Okay. Kind of with Anne Marie, I would prefer. to-
Yeah, I think we need some more research on special use permits first. Yeah, this is actually specific use first permits, not special
Specific use, okay.
still, but it is. I don't know. Special.
In R1 districts, which we may get into the R1, R2. Yeah, customarily, okay, so that's without this, that's unless.
Is that something maybe the zoning, the planning committee can maybe just kind of discuss in more detail?
Yeah, so I sent an email out to some of the still remaining in town members of the zoning expert committee for 2019 and pretty much knocked them back. Yeah, I pretty much nothing back to, we don't have a formal zoning action committee anymore, and I don't know that the people that were involved in the process are all that interested in revisiting it, but we could maybe, pitch a unit week and board, we could.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could hash out some stuff, come up with some.
I mean, I think it definitely needs more research on things.
But this is good. I mean, I'm not trying to be negative or anything.
I think that this is a great discussion.
I mean, that's the purpose. That's all we're trying to do is we're.
Well,
Yeah.
and the reason, I did change it from special use permits to specific use permits. Because it's specific to that specific landowner or specific use. So once that use deceases, then they lose that permit.
home
You
occupation.
don't have just a blanket, business
Forever.
complex going on. It's like that doctor's got to be a doctor, sells his house, so he got. too late.
Going back to the church side of it, though, if we have sections for public and semi-public zones, why couldn't you have a section for religious use? And if in the fact that the church decides they don't want to have the church there no more and they tear it down, then that property can be rezoned to something else, or it could remain as a religious use.
So for instance, in Alamo Heights, which is my neighborhood, there are two churches off like Holloman and Sticks.
Yeah,
And both of those are in a potentially residential district.
Right.
And they are specific use or allowable, whatever you have. But if you were to try to zone for those, you would only be zoning that block. Which isn't really zoning, it's more of the exception to the rule. And if one of those places was to close down after whatever, who knows? If those two units stop being churches, you'd have to go and get them rezoned to put a house on them potentially, depending upon where we have,
Or convert the
or
building.
convert the building into something else. So I think the idea there is to make sure stuff doesn't just randomly pop up and turn into a church without planning, but not necessarily the other way around. So I think if you cut out a corner of a block as a zone, it's gonna be very higher. So that's what we tried to do in Zach. It was.
Yeah, I got.
So then you have, all these little blue zone spots, with everybody claiming to be a church. It's probably easier to just special permit them all, but even that's not. I don't know, churches are kind of just either a part of a district or not, I think.
So with that thought, wouldn't 16, the whole section 16 basically be a special permit section then, if you're?
I'm sorry?
With that thought, then wouldn't the whole item 16 basically be the same as requiring a special? The same mentality would say, if I'm gonna put a small engine repair shop on my property versus putting in a church. They're both special use.
If you're in a residential district and you want to do a repair shop, then you would have to request a specific use permit for that.
But that's not what item 16 says. Item 16 allows it.
No,
home occupations and.
it says, the following uses shall not be permitted as home occupations unless approved as specific use permits. And 6 is small engine repair. 5 is commercial automobile repairs, motor vehicle repair, more than one vehicle.
Yeah, all those are banned.
Oh, these are all
So
banned
you
on
have to get a
16.
specific use permit.
So everything in 16 is banned?
Yeah, well, it's not banned,
It's, you gotta get a special.
Correct,
And maybe that helps. They're not special, it's
specific use.
right.
Yeah, you have to come in and request any of those because they're outliers.
it's not. Yeah, because I think it's just too complicated to regulate it to where you can.
Yeah.
figure out ahead of time,
Or
sure.
private swimming pools. Or railroads, engine repair. We don't want to sit there and have to specify. If you specify out every single business,
I get you.
something slips through the cracks.
Yeah.
And it's not regulated. So this is a very specific, like, if you want to do any of these, we're open to the idea, but there's some caveats. You have to come in and talk about it.
First, I would say that though. I mean,
So if Justin wants to start up a
Well, you-
lawnmower, engine repair.
Minimum
at his
12.
house, he can request a specific use permit for that.
So the following uses shall
That does
not.
allow him to bring 18 wheelers in and start working on their engines.
Yeah.
mine different than yours because
The following uses shall not be permitted as home occupations unless approved as a specific use permit from the 12. Right?
where is that?
15.8,
What page are you reading that?
26.
What page are you? Wait,
12
12.
and 13,
The packet 26, page 12 of the ordinance,
it's on the screen.
page 12 of the ordinance, or my 12 anyway. Page 26 of the packet.
Keep going now.
That's the last line.
I have an e packet, so everything's different apparently. Okay, well, anyway, I mean, you get the idea. I guess that's, I can look at it. I guess the one I'm looking at says the following uses are permitted in R1 and 16 says home occupations, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, that's at the top of the page. It does say that, but then down at 16, at the bottom of 16, talks about specific use.
Not be permitted. Oh, okay. Unless that's proof. Okay, all right, well, all right. Whew, that is a lot to pick here.
Yeah, I know.
This is not, yeah, this is tough for one year. These are years.
That's, yeah.
It's allowed, but you have to get a permit for
I think they're trying to.
No, that always.
No, it's saying that home occupations. No, the stuff from 1 to 15, those are allowed within R1. Right? At 16, the home occupations,
They are allowed with exception.
right, and then the ones that are listed here are not allowed unless they're approved with a specific use permit. But it's not automatic.
It's confusing. It's like, it's listed there, we can do it.
So you
Yeah.
can do it.
Yeah.
Clean up like.
Well, the
moving around.
home occupation and the intent of that is, you're not employing somebody else that's outside the household. You're not changing, the structure itself to, for that business or for that home occupation.
Yeah, okay, I think in reading this again, we're saying home occupations are permitted. But then you go further to say that these things are not considered home occupation
Right,
unless you've gotten a specific use permit.
like a barber shop or
Right.
a salon or.
We can actually break this off into another little chunk just for clarity's sake, and I think
Work.
I think the intent's there, but I think it is,
Right.
like you said, people are gonna point at the list and go, it's right here. So it might be something like breaking off into a little.
Or put it in the same paragraph.
Yeah, or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or to where it doesn't break from one page to the next.
That's just a clerical, we can get through that.
Okay,
I like it.
Okay, and then, moving on to R2, that allows for up to 8 dwelling units per acre. And R3 is 10 dwelling units per acre.
So
And
on tiny homes, are we gonna restrict where tiny homes can be built then in the cities? Is that? I'm just curious, I mean, is that a conversation?
Popping up everywhere.
Is that?
Yeah, when you
So where they can be built at, I thought they were pre-built things.
They don't have to be. What, is there a definition for tiny homes?
It's the C right there on the screen.
Not more than,
See,
It's a family home.
C would include tiny homes. Tiny homes, I think, is, we have a definition somewhere that's like 300
320 square.
square foot or something like that required. And there's some other. I think we might have to define that a little bit more in one of our ordinances, I'm not sure, but. The idea here was that. You know, your R1 had a certain amount of dwellings per acre, your R2 has a certain amount of dwellings per acre. But then you also get into when do you start allowing duplexes, when do you start allowing triplexes? So there's a break point here between single family homes and duplex, triplex. And when you get down to the point of like triplex and density, you can start seeing these tinier homes built, kind of like you go across the street and see there's kind of little villages put together. And that's very up and coming, it's very developer friendly. We've got some places that have looked into doing that before, but we just don't really have the capacity to hold that together. And I'm not sure from a legal standpoint that we have that well.
Would it be a problem moving tiny homes into R2? So people have homes that they can't, that need to be demolished, they can't really afford to put in a full home. So they just want to go back with a tiny home on a lot that they've had in their family for 3 generations.
That would, I think, be where technically HUD manufactured homes and modular homes would come into play from like we didn't have kind of what modular homes are for, is like a set down in a previous area or the.
Yeah, you put the modular home in there.
Not necessarily tiny homes being the answer to all of our problems there, but
But they wouldn't be allowed in R2.
not in R2. You'd have to keep a modular home or a regular stick built home.
I guess I'm just asking as a city, do we want
do we want to go there?
can't afford a full home, so
Right.
these aren't ugly homes, they're just small. So,
That's why we need a designated area. You can build them there. You can't just build them anywhere. I wouldn't want one next to my home.
Well, I don't really know that we have a definition on book for tiny homes that really gives us a lot of.
No, the reason why I left that in there is, whenever we get ready to start focusing on the subdivision ordinance,
right,
with the lot sizes, and we can also discuss, the housing sizes as well. And that, that'll kind of break down what the difference is between a tiny home and a regular single family home is.
Well, whether you're
That's
gonna
the reason.
require permanent foundation or permanent whatever
Yeah, I think these across the street are sitting on blocks.
they are.
Right.
No, I mean, well,
They are
remember,
permanent foundations.
we changed.
Permitted that.
yeah, so that won't happen again.
Right.
Yeah, so it's kind of a tie-in to, so tiny homes is a fad, tiny homes is a thing, and you have to address it somewhere somehow. And so we don't really have a lot of definitions or addressing that, I don't think. I think there's some permitting stuff, but
So,
that was like a kind of a knee-jerk reaction, like our original
okay,
manufactured home
So-
RV ordinance.
so our ordinance in an R2 area wouldn't require somebody to put in a 1,200 square foot house or larger. They
Not
would-
currently.
And we're not looking at doing that. So they could put a 600 square foot house in if they want to.
To me, that's a deed restriction issue.
So if there's no deed restrict, okay.
As long
So
as they meet the minimum standards of the International Residential Code.
Yeah.
They do have minimum size, for like the restrooms, the, sleeping areas, things like that.
That's where you have the definition of a bedroom being, has a closet.
Okay.
And, you know, it's all those international.
When you talk about the tiny home, what is it saying, like, if you have an R3 piece of land. You know, and maybe you don't like the idea of a quadplex where everybody shares a wall.
Right.
You can put the same amount of density and give everybody a home. And so it just kind of allows for that break off from a quadplex into tiny homes in the same space. You know, take it or leave it, but I think the idea of a tiny home is, you know, multiple per lot. I think is one of the things too, so that would be.
And I mean, like you said, I quote unquote tiny or small house
Right.
could still be a single family dwelling.
It could, no,
Right.
Yeah, so it could be in an R2.
Yeah, so I think that's my.
Because I mean, the connotation tiny home really is one of those prefab
Yeah.
deal, you know.
Services buildings, and
But and in reality, we're looking at just small houses,
yes.
small single family houses built
If
to
you
the
owned, if you owned a half an acre and you wanted to put a small house on there, I don't think there's anything in this ordinance that would restrict that. But the idea is that you can't put 4 tiny
Right.
homes on 1 quarter acre you own. Because that becomes.
Right.
Kind of like a quadplex, but they're all single family homes.
The tiny home and the definitions.
Yes, we would, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't think it would restrict you from using per lot as much as it would be from turning your lot into a lot next to your neighbor who owns another half acre.
I just, having gone through all this housing and realizing how expensive a house is. I
Yeah,
just want to
right.
make sure that we're not
Basic.
pricing half our town out of building a house.
Yeah, well, and originally, I think some of you're having a little PTSD from the original ZAC meetings where we had. Percentage of acreage covered by house and acre, and that ended up getting
Oh,
shredded.
Pretty onerous, yeah.
There was some talk of, X% of your property had to be lived in or whatever, and that was a little too restrictive for us. Yeah, how was the bathwater there?
Like the mother-in-law room,
The mother-in-law, and I don't even want to get it.
but that's addressed in here somewhere, right?
It is.
Have a-
There's something in here about like, what's the word, not ancillary dwellings, but back up.
I think it is like an auxiliary dwelling. I think that is.
I'm thinking ancillary, I don't know.
I think the state legislatures. Said stuff about, I mean. I think we're permitting them. For the most part,
We're allowing them in
we're allowing them.
residential.
Tiny mother-in-law.
On the next one.
Yeah, it's a accessory building.
But nobody, that's like not livable. That accessory building is not a tiny.
Name something in
No.
there that is.
But that called it auxiliary dwellings or something, whatever those,
Yeah.
but the state legislature has a name for them. I think it's
Yeah.
like auxiliary.
We were calling them grandma houses.
Yeah.
Mother-in-law. Caretakers. Caretaker dwelling.
You say not livable, but it still could be a bedroom and a bathroom.
Yeah, it was like no kitchen.
Okay.
And I don't know what that is.
Okay.
That's good. Then we got, the M1, the manufactured home. That's, 10 per acre. And then PUD. It's gonna be as determined by the developer. Approved by council. Anybody have any questions on that one?
Now, for for the M1, that would also be where if somebody wanted to come in and build a manufactured home subdivision, it would have to be in that zoned area
Correct.
as opposed to apartment.
Yes.
And we outlined that.
We have one of those, yeah.
We have to.
We had someone-
Condominium, so you have a 4-story condominium being built on them. Right. Would that be classified as?
Condominiums?
Condominium apartment complex.
That's, R3 or R4, I'm sorry.
Multi-family.
Yeah,
Yeah,
condominium.
R4 includes apartments, condominiums, townhouses, and other group dwellings.
Okay, perfect.
So if something were, and again, so if something is zoned R4, you could build R1, 2, and 3 in it,
Yes.
right? Okay.
If you buy condos, knock it down and put a mansion on it. Good for you.
But if I did my house, it sits on 3 lots. Before we get an apartment building.
You'd have to be in an R3 area.
Okay,
Yes, sir.
All right, then we go to C1. That talks about basically it's light commercial.
Districts.
Basically, it's the convenience goods, services for neighborhoods. It includes like bakeries, business services, bed and breakfasts, indoor eating establishments, convenience stores, laundry, office buildings, medical facilities, personal services, professional services.
and so explain the difference between C2 and C1.
I'm sorry.
Explain the difference between C2 and C1.
In C2. That's for major retail, wholesale. That generally not appropriate or compatible next to residential districts.
Is that, how do you qualify that? I mean,
What would be an example of a C2?
Ace Hardware. Walmart.
Okay,
Or would like a local tavern or something like that fall? Would it be a C1 or?
WC1,
Yeah.
as long as it's indoor.
It's a club.
Club or lodges? Oh, I see. Yeah, you're right.
But you know, club,
so then, yeah, so a C1 can go into C2, but a C2 can't go.
Right.
C1 can go to C2, but C2 can, okay.
Your C1 would be more like.
Yes.
Small. For.
But Maximus.
That kind of stuff. Wouldn't want something to put a.
And a C2 would be out on Highway 35.
Or, yeah, I know where it's at. Almost for location specific. Not saying you can't open up across the street. There's a couple of convenience stores on.
Oh, yeah, right.
So like the areas that we've got, as particularly in the north part of town, north part of the city limits, that are mixed use, if we made those commercial, we'd probably say C2. And that way we're covering both C1 and C2. out that, I don't know, I'm just,
Yeah, out 1090 or something.
yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Mm. Okay.
So basically, we'll have.
Yeah, C
category
category would be more the,
Designate also.
it would disturb the neighborhood more than the C one, say like the outdoor bands.
Yeah.
Outdoor heating, things like that.
Like a machine shop that's very loud,
Right.
Distribution center.
Yeah.
Trucks going.
trucks all the time.
That's that wholesale, you know, you wouldn't wanna have somebody driving in and out at 2 a.m. doing delivery.
So wouldn't churches fall under C1?
There you go.
Not unless you pay taxes.
Is that right? And it's anti-commercial?
You don't pay taxes, you don't have a commercial license, you're 501c.
So,
The reason why I didn't,
Hey, sales.
think that C one would, churches would fall under C one is because if you decide to give up that, if the church stops, then any other type of business that falls under C one could go there.
Right.
Yeah, you might want a church there, but you wouldn't want, say, a bar or something right next to you.
What?
Cause they need to be in ours. That's Tim's argument, right? They need to be in R.
It'd be a hard use.
So that's why it was a specific use permit for the churches instead of a whole, having them in a different, in a district itself. Because, churches could, fit within a neighborhood.
Somebody bought out the entire OLG property, you're talking 3 blocks across, and across the street. Put in a distribution center. C2. You know, you're talking about putting that right in the middle of a little neighborhood. And that's a lot of traffic. So, versus like, you know, somebody tries to put a bar in.
like a stop with a car wash.
Yeah, exactly. Another one of those come into town, they throw it in there by.
Well, look at the tire place right across from HEB over there. There's houses right behind that place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
That's a disgrace, that tire place over
Okay.
there.
How you really feel?
They had about 100 tires stacked up there in front.
It's their display.
Yeah, it's a display, all right, a display. I got a Christmas tree made out of. Yeah, painted green, those tires and made a Christmas tree.
That's
Yeah,
creative.
that was very creative.
Until they get ready to dispose of the tires.
They must have been having a sale on used tires.
Okay, then we got, moving on to I1, light industrial. And I2 is the more heavier, industrial.
Okay.
So how noxious fumes? So I mean, we're talking like reactors and chemical plants. Is that, do we want,
I'm sorry?
are we talking chemical plants? Like,
That would fall under I2.
yeah, let's get one.
Yeah,
So we had some
That's not
discussion
like-
about that. We don't want a heavy industry. So how do we qualify?
This would be like what's down at Harbor Refuge now,
Yeah.
Right,
Your
would be your
fertilizer
I2.
plant, your petrochemical plant, your.
Mhm.
fertilizer.
yeah, you don't have a petrochemical plant who's gonna come locate inside city limits and pay those taxes.
Yeah, and.
Maybe.
So
Be that close.
the saving grace here is the map. If you go down to your map and look at your industrial areas, there's really not any. And I think we want a pretty good ability to use like the harbors and continue to make fun of like the light industry. But we also want to distinguish lighter and heavier industry. And I don't think this I district, I2 is all that heavy intended, but we had to put that kind of somewhere. So I think like the fertilizer and the petrochemical fall under that. So if your petrochemical guys drug up or your fertilizer guys drug up, you'd want to be able to release that to somebody that has, you know, some sort of a fume or smell or that kind of.
So kind of what we Done with
Yeah, I mean,
that one where you have you have a barrier between the housing with light
Yeah.
industry before you get to the heavy.
we were thinking the light industry, the I-1 originally, we were talking about it in the back was gonna be kind of like that. 18-wheeler traffic,
Tank farm.
yeah, tank farm or like storage, pod movement or.
Lay down
UPS,
yards.
Lay down yard. It was gonna be pretty sedentary, non-impactful. And then across the road from that would be a little bit more impactful, but you have a buffer for your housing. There's really not all that much industrial land in that side.
That's the only area designated.
But keep in mind, you can build your mansion on I-2 as well.
All my houses there.
Oh, that's true.
Put an apartment complex right there if I wanted.
We want 21 tiny homes.
All the scary folk.
Okay, then we got the public and recreation. Pretty much self-explanatory.
Yes.
Our parks and stuff.
The public uses, talks about the administrative officer.
Who are we thinking that will be? Who's that? Who are we thinking that administrative officer?
Well, that's not looking at your-
In the definitions, I have it as, the official appointed by the city manager to administrate and enforce this chapter.
Which would be Derek, yeah. It's not gonna be me.
Not written in black and white, but it's
That position.
We've not had it there at times, right?
Get into non-conforming lots, structures and uses.
This is your grandfather, right?
Yeah, essentially.
And basically what it is just granting whatever uses, it's being, if it's being used at this time, after this ordinance is adopted, then it's still in compliance, but it is considered non-conforming. Talks about the preservation of the rights.
So back on 5686 accessory uses, what is that? Accessory uses? Right before non-conforming?
Oh, that one?
Oh, so like if you had like a beach shop and a butcher box. Smokehouse next to the barbecue restaurant, accessory building to the use of the things that are typically like expected to be part of the deal.
So accessory uses a use subordinate to the principal use of a building or lot and serving a purpose customarily incidental to the principal use.
So I think anything off the top of my head, but Firestone has that extra set of lift gate or lifts in the back, they're typical.
But it's just saying accessory uses are subject to the same regulations as the principal use.
Yeah, they're allowed to like go crazy, but you might build two buildings. I can't really think of any like really good examples of that right now. The tire storage unit at the tire plant.
The greenhouse, that special place where they do.
Yeah, like
a
like
house.
greenhouse.
That's like a-
So Lavaca's got that Lavaca Auto Group's got that accessory building where they do the undercoatings and stuff. Typical of automotive car lot.
And then this guy who is spray paints and bathrooms and stuff.
You got me there.
Oh.
So if it was a car wash, it could be used as a tire store now.
Well, it wouldn't technically be customary there. Yeah, there might not be.
That would be hard to explain to somebody that it's not customary.
Yeah,
That's not a,
I can't think of a lot of good ones.
Yeah.
But I guess you had like a retail front and an actual butcher shop in the back or things like smokehouse or curing facility or something, butcher in the front.
So it's like commercial one says no storage buildings, but you know, you may have a business that requires you to store.
In the definitions, there's one.
Okay, so I mean, would that be considered accessory then if it's for that use?
It had to be incidental to the use of the commercial building.
Right. Oh, it did say that? Okay.
Let's see.
Like, I don't think you can have like a bar and boat storage.
Incidental, it says accessory use means use subordinate to the principal use of the building or lot and serving a purpose customarily incidental to the principal use. But in two, because they're accessory building, there's one, that's residential district. Two is in other districts, a subordinate building, the use of which is incidental to and used only in conjunction with the main building on the same lot or parcel.
Oh, okay, well, that makes.
That's in the definitions.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a special building. Puts up the stuff and does the value coding.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, there's a guys
Yeah, they got to be-
facility next to.
Yeah.
shop, Yeah.
That would
Yeah, we've got a little storage building back before we just keep like the racks, but that's what we're doing. I was thinking like white barbecues, barbecue house, yeah. Like, you wouldn't want to permit me to have storage units that I then also rent out.
Oh, no.
But it'd be like a non. I was running a barbecue. You know, that's kind of. Been not custom.
Incidental. So I saw some, although I did see on Facebook the other day, like some offering mobile home spots, and I was like, that's a mobile home park?
Yeah.
Didn't know that.
RV spots behind me.
So on item C where it says nonconformities shall not be enlarged upon, expanded or extended, nor be used as grounds for adding other structures or uses prohibited in the same district. So. I mean, I guess this one, you know, I don't know how many people this actually might impact when rezone, but I mean, I could see this being a troublesome one.
Well, like, say White's Barbecue, going back to the example, he's got that area where he's got it covered, same way at large, that covered area where he stores his wood, his.
Right.
Like Pet Devil.
That could be,
That would be considered an expansion of a non-conforming use if they're not in a commercial district.
right,
I think. Both Fit Devil and. White's Barbecue, because the examples would be in
commercial, yeah.
that would be fine. I'm trying to think of examples of like non-conforming uses where they would want to expand, but I think one of the things we're talking about. If you had a duplex. And we put you in an R1 or R2, and you just happen to have the only duplex in town. Wouldn't then be allowed to further add on or subdivide that into a quadplex just because you.
oh, okay, I got you.
Like, well, I didn't conform, so I'm gonna continue to not conform. And but it's not permanent because it's allowable.
Yeah, first thing that comes to mind is like a daycare in the middle of the neighborhood.
Oh, yeah.
It's already existing, but they can't add on another 2,000 square foot to hold additional kiddos without going through the proper channels to get approved for that use.
Okay, but there's still a path. They're not, okay, so there's still a possible path for them to expand.
I'm sorry?
There's still a possible path for them to expand.
Oh, yes, sir. Yeah, anybody has, anybody can ask for a request for a change of zoning, variance, or a specific use permit.
Yeah. Anybody.
Very difficult.
Yeah, you'd have reason.
Yes. Yeah, but I'd ask.
The bar higher than it is now. But there would be a public recourse for that.
And so that's basically what is discussed in the next couple of sections is, it's already in existence and it's non-conforming, but it's a legal non-conforming. Even if as long as it's already under construction. Let's see, and then we got, if you want to do repairs or remodels to a non-conforming use. Talks about the replacement of non-bearing walls, fixtures, wire, plumbing. Not to the extent to exceed 50% of the current replacement value.
You were back? Okay.
So if somebody, they weren't gonna expand, but they were gonna rebuild or improve what they got.
Just remodel.
Yeah, but it.
So if hurricane,
Not changing.
But
It
this,
would have, I mean, you have to start with the non-conforming. If they're remodeling a house, they're not non-conforming.
The idea there is if you have a non-conforming use and you stop, you lose your ability to non-conform. But if you shut down for repairs for 9 months, you'd still be able to open back up with your non-conforming use intact. But this also goes in with you couldn't expand. So you're allowed to go in like, let's say my convenience store roof starts to leak. And my options are close down for 3 months, put a new roof on it. Oh, but I don't want to lose my business because I'm not conforming. Well, no, you're fine. Fix your building, run your business, shut down for a week, a month, whatever it takes to fix it. But then you also can't come back and go, hey, I know I've been shut down for 18 years. I'd like to reopen.
like we do it.
We got-
But you can replace the roof, but you can't tear the whole building down and build a new one.
Right, I can replace the roof, I can replace the wall, I can change out the lights, all these things I've done, but you can't necessarily just buy the lot next door, bulldoze and build a new one.
But if somebody wanted to do that, then
They'd have to go to the
there is a path
Yeah,
to get, if there's circumstances, whatever.
okay,
those would be emergency situations where I think that would be fine. As far as I'm aware, I don't think that you lose your business due to a hurricane. But I'm not, I mean, am I wrong there? Are we right something down?
No, I definitely wouldn't. I wouldn't agree on prohibiting them from rebuilding after a catastrophic event like that.
okay.
They couldn't expand at the same time.
Right. They had to build it just as it was.
I'm just questioning the line that's saying to an extent not exceed 50% of the current
So
replacement
if you
value.
look at B, nothing in the chapter should be deemed to prevent you from restoring the safe condition. So if your building got obliterated by a fire, you'd be able to rebuild that building. Give or take.
What do you think, Anne Marie?
I think it's fine. I mean, that's no different. I mean, where I come from on that, that's no different than the floodplain ordinance we have to deal countywide with. On, floodplain is the 50% rule. So if you're non-conforming in Magnolia Beach, if it blows away that house, you have to put the next one on stilts.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just, and you can't build it back though. I mean, they're more strict, right? But that's floodplain administration FEMA required.
So it goes back to when we approved the grease trap ordinance and all the restaurants that were in town that are non-conforming. If they increase their capacity by more than 50%, then they have to follow the ordinance as written and increase their grease trap size.
But I guess
So
my
the
question is,
50% rule
if
is
somebody
there.
wanted to really make improvements to where it costs, the improvements they're putting in is worth more than 50% of the current value, that they can't comply, because to comply means they got moved. They can't be there anymore.
I mean, but that's just life, isn't
I
it?
mean, well, that's my question is, do we recognize
That's life, because I mean, you don't want them to increase it and make it.
stay in an
and
non-conforming, make it
like
better?
more traffic, more in the middle of a neighborhood. I think we're talking about commercial and residential.
Right. And yeah, and basically what,
And that's unlikely because they want the traffic.
Yeah, we don't want to encourage them to invest more in a non-conforming situation. Right.
right.
The idea is you keep.
Make it more
non-conforming.
non-conforming.
Yeah.
You can sell it to the next guy, you can put a new roof on it, you can, whatever, but nobody wants you to dig in deeper. Expand your offer, start doing more on this board.
So the Board of Adjustment, who is that?
We currently have a board of adjustment, right? So that is the special, well, we don't have one appointed. but we have it in our ordinances.
Right.
But I mean, it's one of those, really, it's a special committee that only kind of is ad hoc.
Right.
You need it.
Yes.
Yeah,
And they are quasi judicial.
So it's,
I mean, so that board, what that's intended to do is if you are, we dealt a lot with this in the past couple months, not here. And it's intended to, if there's a residential code variance or a commercial code variance. So, you have your international building code, and for some reason they want a variance from that code, which is black letter. We did have a code enforcement person here before that claimed that was not possible. But it actually is possible under the BAA, the building adjustment of board.
And we did that. I mean, it's been years, but I remember just one instance back in the mid-2000s and we had a board assembled, but it had one instance and then nothing else. And so
Yeah, it's very unusual.
never we're gonna have meetings for. So we assemble them as needed.
Well, the Board of Adjustments,
Technical type.
the Board of Adjustments, they'll deal with setback requirements, height requirements. Anything that's in the ordinance, any variance to the code. So instead of going to council, it's actually you can go to the zoning board of adjustments.
Okay, that's the ZBA. I was talking about the
Right.
BAA,
so
Board of
Oh,
Adjustment,
that's the construction board, yeah.
the Board of
Oh,
Adjustments and
that was different.
Appeals.
Right, that's a different board.
so this is after the planning board has said you can't do something, or is the planning board even involved in any of this?
The planning board is not involved when they go straight to the zoning board of adjustments.
So you say. it's
For
not
variance.
covered, and so you have to go to the zoning board for permission.
If I say, no, you can't build your house that close to the street, you have the option to request an appeal to the zoning board of adjustments. And it goes straight to them and they're the final decision.
And that's different than the planning.
and zoning.
Right.
Right.
Sorry.
Okay. And so then council can't be not overrule it, so they.
No,
Yeah, you have to, when you do approve a zoning ordinance, I don't think legally you can have your city council also override it. I think the
It's state law.
code has a thing where.
You kinda got around it.
Members-
Been tested.
yeah, I think the attorney general did
Yeah,
opinion on that 20, 30 years ago or so, that
yeah.
council couldn't be on that board.
I pulled that court case out one day. I don't know if you were there. But I pulled that out in the Zach.
Moving
because we were
along.
Talking about the makeup of a potential
Yeah,
zoning
That's what I'm thinking.
board of adjustments.
What, moving
And
along?
can we appoint a couple council
I think we were
members?
just
Planning board
looking at it
members,
to see if there's something
Council members were just straight
we need
lines.
to do, not move along here, not really picking it apart. We're just yakking and jacking.
Yeah. Yeah, you can have staff involved, you can have,
So,
there are options. I think at one point we had up to half the board could be zoning, planning board members. If we could
have all of this to go first.
So they-
No, I think we're. I mean,
We're not gonna pick it apart, are we? The
the
whole thing?
zoning board
If we do,
is described in Division 3.
Yeah,
The discussion is about.
So it's right on the.
yeah.
It's going great.
Okay, we got the non-conforming for land uses. I think they wanted to point out was C. If the use ceases for any reason for a period of more than 90 days, it converts back to whatever district it's in.
So there's no construction there, is that what you're saying?
I'm sorry.
There's no development on this property? This is just land?
The use of the land. So say,
Barbershop's in the middle of a neighborhood.
right, and they cease for 90 days,
Be barbershop.
they can't start it back up again.
But
It
if,
converts back to residential.
but in his example where you're shutting down to do maintenance.
That's different.
That's permitted.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why we had those separated out. We talked one time in Zach about. These fires, large scale construction, not shutting a business down.
The weird ones, one comes to mind to me Cause where it gets with that commercial and on the map, I think it's gonna be weird where on sides of streets, I think about George Street. Where the city warehouse is,
Right.
you've got residential, you've got a bakery. And, several times over the years, they've stopped, kind of closed down and then people go back in. But, I would think that's like a C1 district,
Yeah.
even though it's got a lot of residential in it, but I don't know how it falls on the map.
Yeah.
But that's the kind of place I think about where it's kind of a little bit sticky.
Yeah, I think some of
that is shown as a commercial. And then. I don't know what this is.
But we have a few of those areas in town that are just a little bit sticky because they're right.
Yeah, and if you make them C1 districts, so the houses are fully permitted within.
Right.
So I think to Derek's point earlier, convert most of your mixed use area to C1 district. You're not putting anybody out on the street.
Yeah.
Again, I think we all kind of agreed to look at the map one more time before we.
Oh, definitely.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Yeah.
While in your car.
Well, I'm done. I'm driven the road.
Okay,
And then we get into non-conforming structures.
and this is what we're talking about, if it gets destructed by fire or whatever. It's 150%, okay, so there's like, okay. So, I mean, well, according in B here, I mean, if it is destroyed by more than 50%, you wouldn't be able to rebuild if you're not in the correct district. Without getting some process to get a change. Right?
Yeah, so that'd be something that we might want to think out for. This is kind of where it comes to how comfortable is the council with non-conforming use, how much.
Yeah,
And this is somewhere that I think, people have their difference of opinions.
so it says structure be destroyed by any means, we might want to look, if it's a hurricane or a natural disaster.
Non-acts of God.
That's something to look at.
If you get destroyed by an act of God, it almost seems like you shouldn't have.
Okay. Structure uses.
We're pacing it. Yeah, thanks.
And I know we generally talked about some of the administrative enforcement already in general.
Right, yes. Specific use permit, we discussed that. And so,
The specific use permit is granted by city council, is that correct? Based on 56-184. So that's not a zoning board, that's a city council.
For specific use permits? It would go before the planning and zoning board first.
That would be kind of like a small ordinance that we normally do now. So we go to planning.
Yeah, recommendation.
You guys.
And we can appeal.
Yeah, it goes to city council.
Okay.
Fine. Decision.
Okay.
Yeah, the only thing that wouldn't go to council would be the requesting for a variance.
Special use permit gets denied by council to the appeal to the. Zoning.
ZBA.
What's that?
If the planning board and council denies a special use.
I don't know if
If it's denied, it still goes to the council. But the council has to approve it by a superintendent.
And I think that's the final say. So if they deny it,
After that,
it's over.
So to change the map, that goes before council,
Yeah, that's a change in zone.
is that a supermajority vote also? Or-
I believe so. No?
Just a majority
So
for a change in zoning, but if it's denied by the planning and zoning, or if,
He was actually, they were asking about the map though, to change the map.
so
well, that's changing zoning. If you're gonna change the map, that's changing zoning on the map.
Like a.
So it's more than 20% of the surrounding area, the property owners, if they object. Then it has to be a supermajority approval. If the planning and zoning not denies it, it has to be supermajority of the council. But other than that, it's just majority.
But there's major, as I recall, I'm pulling it up right now, but there's major, like if you change your map, the notices that have to go out are incredible.
Yes.
I mean, like citywide. If you're gonna change like all of the city map, or I guess to that, hold on, I'm pulling it up right now.
We put it, we put them in the water bills.
Okay.
Well, it'd basically be like this, it'd be like a town meeting.
Yeah.
To present it to the city,
Mhm.
to the public.
So are we thinking of doing another town meeting?
Yeah, I think before we approve this, yeah, I mean, that's what we want to start with y'all. You know, and find one, do this one more time. And then once we're all pretty comfortable and knowledgeable with what we've got. And we still need to look at the map and everything. And then, but yeah, before we implement anything, we want to super educate the public and what we're doing.
Fine, for sure. That first meeting.
Not starting with demolitions is.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Yeah.
We want to have cookies. Some other good stuff.
Maybe some alcohol.
I don't know.
All right.
Okay, well, going back to the for the structure uses for non-conforming, on E. On E. States that when a non-conforming use of a structure or structure and premises in combination is discontinued or abandoned for 6 months or 6 consecutive months. Or for 18 months during a 3-year period. Then basically it reverts back to the district that it's in.
Problem.
So on the initial adoption of this ordinance, there'll be a public hearing. It's required to be in the paper 15 days in advance. But any change, it has to be mailed by United States mail to each owner or real or business personal property where the proposed non-conforming use is located as indicated by the most recent approved municipal tax rolls, and each occupant of the property not later than the 10th day before the hearing date. Contain the time and place of the hearing, include the following in bold 14-point type. The municipality is holding a hearing that will determine whether you may lose the right to continue to use your property for its current use. Please read this notice carefully.
That's where it's gonna get sticky, folks.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's why we want to have it right the first time.
Right.
Good start.
There will be some irate.
If a proposed change to a regulation or boundary is protested, then you have to do just other stuff. Anyway, just know that it's the governing body by ordinance may provide that the affirmative vote of at least 3/4 of its members is required to overrule a recommendation of the zoning commission that is proposed. That also can be done. You don't have to.
Well, I mean, we can, yeah, and a lot of that, some of that's in that last page too, but, look at, I mean, continue to look this over, and if you have anything new comes to mind, let Derek or I know, we'll take the comments we've made. And,
For under specific use permits, I guess also note that I did put recreational vehicle parks.
Oh.
And that one,
what page was that?
for specific use permits, page.
Oh, yeah, RV parks.
5, 6.
RV parks.
3/4 should have to have 5.
Yeah, and Marie, Jeff brought up a good point about there's only 6 of them. So 3/4 doesn't.
Work. Yeah, I mean, but you could do 2/3. I mean, whatever.
That's
I would read that to say up to 3/4.
You can't require it to be a majority or unanimous vote
Right.
to overrule. But you can require up to 70%.
Yeah.
Majority.
It'd be 5 members.
That's 5 members.
So we wanted 2/3 would make it.
Four or six would be the majority and then.
That would be a
six.
super majority, so 5, 6. Okay, well, whatever. So are you guys gonna discuss the R1, R2 thing like we were discussing, or did we settle that?
I don't think we settled anything.
We can hash that out at a later time.
Okay,
I'm thinking, let's maybe do some more research on what some of the other cities are doing, you know,
Yeah.
and.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Maybe talk with our public works guy about utility restrictions.
we're gonna fix all that.
because yeah, that's not my concern. Again, we just want to make, we want to make sure we get it right the first time on the map. And so, yeah.
More areas broader.
And then the restriction,
But next,
not, you know, the use of less than 3 months or more than 3 months, if it's a major fire hazard, we're gonna modify that language. Right, if you had a hurricane or a fire, then the language will, you know, we won't make them tear their building down, they can rebuild it. So that was the.
Yeah, well, and my thoughts were, if something like that was to happen, then, let them go ahead and rebuild. If it's non-conforming, but if it sits there for 10 years and then say, decide later on, hey, I want to go ahead and put this business back, you know.
no,
I know you say that, but the way it's written.
You're talking about that part where it says it's burned down 50%.
yeah,
I think we
So
can
just modify that slightly.
we can suss out the time restraint and the building, the restoration restraint into 2 different pieces.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I can do that. Get on it.
when we bring it back the next time, we can talk about some of this, but then we can do a first pass on. At the map too. You know,
Can we have it a little bit larger?
I mean, you can,
Map?
it's online. It's online, blow up on your screen, but yeah, I mean, for us, for the workshop. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh my God.
Take it over to the GNW and get it.
We don't have new eyeballs like somebody. All right, I make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Can't read it. Close with new eyeballs.
What?
Second, close with new eyeballs.
I can read.
Almost.
I get these.
Rosie.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to adjourn, all in favor. Say aye. Oh. Good job, Derek.
Yeah, that was a very good job, Derek.
I think he's.
You sound like you're getting sick. That's what it sounds like. I'm so glad to see you well, though. Look better.
Getting there.
Yeah, you look much better than you looked. Oh, that must have been scary.
Make sure he gets the right person.
And I say, I don't even know what happened, but Jody's like, Derek may be back or he may not. You know, it's like, holy shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.